In this video, you will learn how to set up your board for the mechanical drawings. What you'll need is the following tools. You will need a 30-60-90 triangle and a 45-45-90 triangle. You'll need a roll of tape, and technically you'll only probably need just a piece of that tape. A ruler, a piece of paper, the T-square, and your boards. As a team, and by team I mean the table that you sit at, you guys should coordinate to get all of these materials. It'll be a lot easier that way. So to start, to set up our paper, we need to do something called squaring up the paper. This is a T-square because these two angles here are 90-degree angles, here and here, 90-degree angles. In order to set up your papers accurately, you must have the T-square perfectly against the side of the board. Perfectly against the side of the board means that it is touching the side of the board entirely. If it is even a little bit off, and I don't know if you can even tell in the video, but I actually just moved it a little bit, it's not perfect, and therefore the paper will not be square. So in order to obtain that perfection when it comes to setting up your papers, you should have the T-square perfectly against the side of the board at all times. This will save you a lot of trouble, especially for those of you that are concerned that you're not good artists or you're not good at using the materials or the tools. It is a very simple process. So just make sure that this T-square is against the side of the board perfectly and you should be okay. Now if you're righty, it's actually best to have it on the left side, just because righties tend to drag their elbows as they draw or their hands as they draw. And if this is on this side and you have a tendency to drag your arm or your elbow, you could actually hit the T-square off. So I always tell righties to put it on the left side. Lefties, flip it and make sure that the T-square part is on the right side. When you're set, you will take your paper and you will lay it on top of the T-square so that both corners are hitting the T-square and the paper is laying flat on top of the T-square. So once you have it onto the T-square, you'll need a piece of tape. And nothing too big. Just two pieces, and you will tape down only the top two corners. Make sure that as you're doing this, you're adding some pressure down on the tape so that the corners are actually being met here. And you want to make sure that you do not tape the bottom two corners down. The reason you don't want to tape the bottom two corners down is because you're going to be using the T-square to slide up and down your paper. And if the bottom corners have tape on them, it's going to catch a hold of the T-square and potentially rip your paper. So this is actually squaring up the paper on the board. Keeping your T-square to the side, laying the paper on top, taping the two top corners. Very simple. Now what we have to do is we have to draw our lines. And today I'm going to draw in pen just so that you guys can see it on the screen, because of where the screen is, it's far from here and the pencil may not be dark enough for you to actually see. So I'm going to draw in pen, but at all times you should have pencil, not a pen for these drawings. So what we have to do is we have to measure a 1/2 inch. So now I know we worked with measurement a bit in 6th grade and not much in 7th grade, but here what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing measurement again, and we need to find out where a 1/2 inch is. And we need to also remember that every measurement starts at the 0, not at the edge of the ruler, because the edge of the ruler and the 0 is about a 1/4 inch off. So we don't want to start at the edge of the ruler, because if we do, all of our measurements will be wrong. And in this class, you get graded for how many 1/16ths of an inch you might be off in your measurement. So we're going to start at 0. And what we want to do is we want to line that 0 up with the bottom of the paper and make sure it's accurate. And then we will make a line at a 1/2 inch. We call this a hash mark. And so then what we'll do is we'll take our T-square, and as long as the T-square is against the side of the board perfectly, once again, making sure the T-square is the side of the board perfectly, we line it up with our little hash mark there, and we draw a line all the way across. Now because we've set up our board, our paper I should say, squared it up with the T-square, because we've done that, by drawing this line, as long as my t-square was perfectly aligned as I drew that line, this line, just because of one hash mark, is now parallel to the bottom of the paper. And parallel means that it is a 1/2 inch in distance here and a 1/2 inch in distance right there. And that's actually very important because we want to make sure that these things are a 1/2 inch perfectly and that the line is also square with the paper. Now, the next thing we need to do is we're going to be drawing a vertical line going up and down. We do not want to take our t-square and go up and down. There's a reason that we don't. I can't guarantee that these boards are cut perfectly 90 degrees. And because of that, we're looking for perfection here. And if I draw a line this way, it may not be perpendicular to the line that I just previously drew. And if it's not perpendicular, we can't guarantee that the angles are perfectly 90 degrees. We won't know that. So what we need to do is we need to set up our triangles on top of our t-square. And we can use either of these two triangles. This is a 30, 60, 90 triangle on my right hand. And the reason they call it a 30, 60, 90 is because that's the angles of the triangle, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. And this one here is a 45, 45, 90 degree angle. And these two both obviously have 90 degree angles. And because they both have 90 degree angles, we can use both of them for this demonstration today. And so what we're going to do is we're going to line up our ruler, 0 at the edge of the paper, and at a 1/2 inch, I'm going to make another hash mark going up and down. And then I'm going to slide my t-square and my triangle together. So my t-square is perfectly against the side of the board. My triangle is now perfectly on top of my t-square. And this creates a perfect 90 degree angle. So once I have that set up, I'm going to take my pen, and in your case, the pencil, and I'm going to draw my line down. Now what I've done is I've created a perpendicular line. At this angle right here, this cross, this intersection, every single one of those angles is perfectly 90 degrees. It's because I set my paper up perfectly before with my t-square on the board, squaring up my paper. I drew my first line with that t-square still against the side of the board all the way across. And then when I put my triangle, which has a 90 degree angle on it, down on my board and drew that line, I made sure that it was perfectly perpendicular. When you're done, on the bottom right hand corner, you will write your name and then whatever the day of the class would be. So, 8-1, 8-2, 8-3, 8-4, I don't even know. So whatever your class period is. So this way, if the papers get mixed up with other classes, I know which class you're in. So you're going to put your class there. And this is setting up the board.